when it comes to making it with your apps, there's only two ways that you can actually make it. By make it, I mean like 200, 200, 300, 400, 500k a month. And this is either A, you build one app, a rocket app, it does millions a month. Think, Cal.ai, Opal, MyFitnessPal, all of these rocket apps, they built one app, it took off really well and making millions from it. Second way is by building multiple smaller apps. Now, smaller can be anywhere from 0 to 100 to 200k a month. But you build tens of these apps and you end up doing mils a month from doing multiple. It's been on my mind loads recently because I've just been scrolling through X so much and see so many people talking about how they're going for volume of apps rather than singular apps. It almost seems like 2026, especially for those in this space, is the year of building as many apps as possible rather than focusing on one app as it has been previously. First, let me define what these two approaches are in a little bit more detail. The 100 app approach, what I'm going to call it from here on out, is basically you're an app studio. Your product is building apps, not the apps themselves. You build as many apps as you need to build. You build an app, you launch it, you move on to the next. You build an app, you launch it, you move on to the next. Very little marketing is done for each app. Most of it is relying on ASO, word of mouth, and maybe a bit of a TikTok strategy and Facebook ads if you so choose. But the focus is on launching as many apps as possible rather than taking an individual app to as far as it can possibly get. Now, the rocket app strategy or single app strategy is basically just taking one single idea. You really believe in this idea, like a business or anything else, and you put as much effort into it for as long as possible. Maybe not for as long as possible until it fails because of the reason of the product, and you just put months and months of work into it. Now, for me, there seem to be three key benefits of the 100 app approach that make it better than the one app, one product approach. Firstly, there's way more chance of success of an app succeeding. Now, what you mark that success as is obviously different. You may have a lower chance of reaching a mil, 2 mil a month, but the chance of an app actually making money is way higher because the more apps you launch, ultimately you are going to reach that goal. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with the one app approach, you may spend 6 months, 8 months on an app, it doesn't even work or it's not meant to work and you have to move on to the next one. Whereas this approach, ultimately you will make at least small amounts of money very quickly. It's the scale that I think it becomes harder. Now, secondly, and this is something a lot of people don't think about, but it's a way more sellable business you're creating. If you have 10, 15, 20 apps, you have better cash flow, more reliable cash flow, and therefore when it comes to selling your business, either your whole app studio or an individual app, it's a lot easier to sell because the revenue month on month is way more predictable than a singular app. Also, you can obviously sell individual apps by themselves if you so choose to get quick cash in. But overall, it's just a more sellable, reliable business. Now, the third key lesson that I think is the most important is that lessons can be taken from one app and applied to every other app you're building. And this is key because say one app's succeeding and working really well, say you've got one strategy, marketing strategy, onboarding strategy, or product strategy that works really well, you can take that and add it to every other app you're building to scale them harder. Now, with that said, there is a couple key issues that I think really draw this strategy back. Firstly, there's a high chance that you're not putting enough effort into an app that has the potential to be a rocket app. What do I mean by this? You may have built a really good idea, even a really good product or MVP. You put it live and it has a real potential to become that rocket app, to make a mil, 2 mil, 3 mil a month. But you're not putting the effort in that is required to get it to that point. Meaning you have apps which have the potential to reach those huge numbers, but it needs the effort to get to those huge numbers, but you're not giving it. And this leads nicely into my second issue, which is basically you get addicted to building, but allergic from actually marketing the idea. So you're putting too much effort into building as many ideas as possible, but you're almost scared in a way of focusing on one thing, and that's what's going to draw you back. Now, the third and final thing, which I think is a big issue as well, is there's no compound effect. When you build one app, I find there's a much bigger compound effect because every video you post or anything you put live or influencer you work with or ad you put live all compounds together to build a better app. Every issue you face, you learn from it, you build a better app. You know what I mean? Everything works together that your progress is obviously far more exponential. Now, with an app studio, because you're starting from scratch so often, the only thing that's compounding is your knowledge. So obviously you can build apps faster, probably build better apps faster, probably recognize a better idea faster, but the compounding effect's way lower because it's not compounding on a single app. Now, what about the one app approach? What's good about this? Now, first things first, you're obviously going to learn way more lessons about the product, marketing the product, and actually building and scaling an app way more than you would from the 100 app approach, because you're taking an app, you're building it, and you're putting effort and time into it for a serious amount of time, which is leading you to learn way more than if you just build an app and move on to the next thing. You're learning marketing, way more about distribution, about working with influencers or any marketing strategies you're doing, and also just scaling up the product working more on product and taking user feedback, way more so than you do from just building 1,000 apps and not even working on them after launch. Secondly, unlike 100 apps, everything is compounding. Everything you do, everything you work on compounds on this app, and it grows and grows faster and faster and faster and faster, meaning obviously more money for you, but also a bigger and bigger app that is scaling exponentially. Every month, obviously if it's scaling correctly, you should make more than the last month, which is obviously different from the 100 app approach, where next month could be less, or it could be the same, or it could be more, depending on how your next app does. It's not exponential growth. Now, what are the issues? Well, the core issue for me on working on one singular app for ages is if you pick the wrong idea and you give it all your time and thought space for a long period of time, that time can obviously be wasted on something which you're never going to make it. Sometimes when you put your mindset in the idea of I'm going to work on this product because I know it's the best idea, you limit yourself in the sense that you restrict yourself from pivoting and coming up and doing better ideas that come up because you're so focused and fixated on the singular idea. It's what I had an issue with on my app. I built it and I was fixated on it being a good idea that I wouldn't let it go and I wouldn't move on to the next thing. Which leads nicely into the next point, which is it's very easy to fall into the sunk time thinking, which is basically the more you spend on it, the more you think it's more likely to work, the more you spend on it. You know what I mean? So you're like, well, I worked this week on it, it's going to work next week. And it's like gambling. You just keep going and going and going and going, and you're just sinking more and more time into it rather than saying, switch, actually, I need to change my idea now. Now, the third and final thing, which is big for me, is that actually working on one singular idea and limiting yourself to it for however knows how long can feel almost limiting in terms of the ideas you can work on in a way. One thing I love about the 100 app approach, which I didn't even mention, is that you get to work on so many new and exciting things all the time that your passion really stays there for what you're building. Now, sometimes if you work on the same thing over and over and over and over again, the passion slowly dies and dies and dies and dies until you have nothing left and it becomes a job that you've made for yourself. Now, compare that to the 100 app approach, where you can just work on new things all the time. There's a lot more passion in it, and you can just keep thinking of new and exciting ideas and working on them all the time. And it's likely to be a much more long-term thing that you can do without getting burnout or anything else. To be honest, I don't actually know which method is better. Myself, I'm trying to line to myself somewhere in the middle. So not launching apps really quickly, getting them out of there, moving on to the next thing as soon as I launch it, but also not spending months and months and months on an idea because it's the main idea I want to work on. Right now, my sort of thought process is launch an app, give it my all in terms of marketing, spend as much time as I possibly can on it in terms of marketing, getting it out of there, distributing it and validating it, reviewing the progress, reviewing how it does, and only then deciding whether it's something I want to continue with or whether I want to move on to the next project. That way, I'm giving it a fair chance, and if it is something which has that rocket potential, I'm putting the effort in that's needed to get it to that rocket app. Because the issue with the 100 app approach that I find is the biggest thing is people will launch an app and they just won't put enough effort into the marketing that actually validates if it's a good idea. And that's one thing that we try to differ ourselves with, and we're trying to do differently, which is put an app live, validate it with marketing, but as quickly as possible. If it's a good idea, keep working on it. If it doesn't look like it's validated at all or people aren't buying into the product, move on to the next project. So yeah, I don't really think it's one or the other. I don't think it's build one app for ages or 100 apps quickly. I think it's more so build it quickly, test it quickly, validate if it works. If it works, lock in on it. And if it doesn't work, move on to the next thing quickly. So basically, main word here, be quick, test it quickly, do everything quickly. And if it looks like it has potential, lock the fuck in on it and give it your all. If it looks like it's a product problem, not a marketing problem or anything else, then think about moving on to the next project.